Hello everyone, welcome for today's first episode. I am Crisavic V. Catalonia, but you can call me Teacher Chris. Just bear with me and I hope you can learn something from my lecture. Just enjoy, relax, and stay focused. Okay, let's begin for Chapter 2, which is the performance assessment. So what is a performance assessment? Performance assessment engages students in activities and tasks that require application of knowledge and skills through creating of a presentation or product. Performance is a shorthand for performance-based or performance and product. It can be simple or complex, such as keyboarding skills or creating a remote-controlled machine. In this case, it allows students to play an active role in the assessment process, which experts have found increases their engagement and in turn enhances their learning. In some circumstances, such as singing, playing the piano, or performing gymnastics, this is a presentation. In other circumstances, a product such as a completed paper, project, or movie is used to demonstrate this competence. Performance assessment is vital as it gives students attention and focus which are improved when they are actively involved in the learning process. They are also motivated to practice higher level critical thinking abilities and have more meaningful learning experiences. Okay, for the next one, alternative assessment and authentic assessment cannot be used synonymously with performance assessment. Alternative assessment is any method that differs from conventional paper and pencil tests. Authentic assessment involves direct examination of a student's ability to use knowledge to perform a real-life task. What constitutes authentic assessment varies. In this case, alternative assessment is any classroom assessment practice that focuses on continuous individual student progress. Perhaps the best way to define alternative assessment is to say that it's the counter to traditional forms of standardized assessment. It assesses higher order thinking skills. Students have the opportunity to demonstrate what they learn. Some examples of alternative assessments that you might consider are the following: open book exams, crib sheets, take-home exams, collaborative testing, student portfolios, performance tests, retake policies, adding the option. Authentic assessment determines if a student can successfully apply classroom information and abilities to a variety of contexts, scenario, and circumstances. Authentic assessment is a measure of course learning outcomes that is based on theoretical best practices for teaching and learning. It can be compared to the difference between gauging what pupils know and how they can apply that information in different ways. These assignments differ by discipline, but they almost always require students to complete a project. These types of assignments will vary by discipline, but typically require students to complete a project. For example, you may ask students to apply an engineering problem to a real-world example, develop a web application, design a model, critically review case studies, or create multimedia presentations. Examples of alternative assessment include observations, exhibitions, oral presentations, experiments, portfolios, interviews, and projects. So the characteristics of performance assessment. Performance assessment has 7 characteristics. First is students explain, justify, and defend. Students use reasoning skills, uses engaging ideas of importance and substance, typically no single correct answer, requires sustained work, use clear criteria and rubrics for scoring, and lastly, students perform, create, construct, produce, or do something. In the characteristic of performance assessment wherein students explain, justify, and defend, in this case, students are allowed to share their insights or thoughts about the certain topic task given by the teacher. Students use reasoning skills. This active learning technique exercises students' inductive reasoning skills and promotes active engagement and inquisitiveness. In general, performance assessments should be designed to emulate the context in which the intended knowledge, skills, or abilities are to be applied. Examinees must demonstrate their ability to accomplish activities that are frequently complicated in nature, and they must generally exhibit their abilities or skills in circumstances that closely mirror real-life scenarios. And now let's proceed to the strengths of performance assessment. Strengths of performance assessment are better suited to measure complex thinking targets than SR items or simple CR items. Instruction is integrated with assessment. Students are more engaged in active learning. Skills are assessed directly. There are more opportunities to observe the process students use to arrive at responses. Students have an opportunity to demonstrate their learning in different ways. In the strengths, students can use the multiple specific criteria for judging success as they learn. Students learn to evaluate their own performance. Students can practice working effectively with others, motivates educators to explore the purposes and processes of schooling learning goals. Instructional practices and standards are revisited. Use of classroom time may differ. Adequate resources need to be available for all. Performance assessment often rely on a specific skill set of the student, such as creativity, flexibility, or a willingness to engage in public speaking. Recognize that children can express what they know and can do in many different ways. Evaluate progress as well as performance. Evaluate the whole child. Involve children in the process of assessing their own growth. Teachers interact with students as they engage in the task, providing feedback and prompts that help students learn through multiple opportunities to demonstrate what their skills. So here's the limitations of performance assessment, which has three areas. So the first one is reliability. So in the performance assessment are subject to considerable measurement error, because major sources of error is with scoring and inconsistent student performance. Number 2 is sampling, wherein fewer samples of student proficiency are available and generalization can be more limited. And lastly, the time, which is to construct tasks to develop scoring criteria and rubrics to administer the tasks to observe students, can be difficult to interact in a timely manner and can be difficult to estimate time needed for students. In relation to reliability in the limitations of performance assessment, a reliable assessment is also one that is relatively free of measurement error. The fundamental meaning of reliability is that a given test taker's score on an assessment should be essentially the same under different conditions, whether he or she is given one set of equivalent tasks or another, whether his or her responses are scored by one rater or another, whether testing occurs on one occasion or another. The last part of the chapter 2 of performance assessment would be the strengths and weaknesses of performance assessment. As you can see in the table, there are two categories, the strengths and weaknesses. Under the strengths are the following: integrates assessment with instruction, learning a course during assessment, provides opportunities for formative assessment, tends to be more authentic than other types of assessment, more engaging, active involvement of students, provide additional way for students to show what they know and can do. And for the weaknesses, reliability may be difficult to establish, measurement error due to subjective nature of the scoring may be significant, inconsistent student performance across time may result in inaccurate conclusions. Few samples of student achievement requires considerable teacher time to prepare and student time to complete, and lastly, difficult to plan for amount of time needed. To sum it up, some disadvantages of performance-based tests that are given to our children can include limitations to the teacher, such as teaching specifically to the test and not allowing the students to learn outside of the test material, as well as limiting the value of the test. Performance-based assessments can empower students by giving them freedom to make choices within parameters set by teachers about the direction that their learning should take. Giving students this kind of ownership of their learning process can be a powerful motivator. Therefore, I can say that the strengths generally outweigh the problems, but only if you take a deliberate, contemplative, and diligent approach. Performance evaluation is a difficult and time-consuming process. To achieve the goals specified in the qualities listed, time, energy, and resources must be invested. That would be all for the Chapter 2 Performance Assessment. Thank you for watching.